Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bullpen. Special edition of the Bullpen today. We have two individuals, Amy Peikoff, attorney at law, Parler Chief Policy Officer. Amy, thank you for being back on the show. How are you?
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Doing okay.
Absolutely. Also, we have Mr. David Grasso, host of Follow the Prophet with David Grasso, and very accomplished individual. Thank you, sir, for being back.
Always great to be here.
All right, let's chop it up about a few things. We're going to highlight social media and the social media restriction in the United States of America. And if we have time, we're also going to talk about Russia and their intentional manipulation of social media, digital assets, etc. I don't want to presume what you know or believe about social media restrictions in America. So if you would, give me your sentiment and I will respond. Amy, we'll start with you.
Sure. So in terms of restrictions that social media companies put on content, my preference would be to leave that decision up to the free market. Unfortunately, I think that we're in a situation where the decisions that are being made by the larger social media platforms, the dominant platforms, are not made entirely by the free market. So for me, I'm seeing a situation in which government is flagging for social media companies so-called misinformation and other sorts of content and putting pressure on them to exercise the freedom that they have under Section 230 in certain ways that are not ideal. And so I think that there is a place for government to come in and provide some redress because there is actual censorship going on. That's my view.
Okay, Mr. Grasso.
I think I'm going to toe the conservative line on this one. These are private companies. It's up to Meta, formerly known as Facebook, to determine what should be on their platform or not. There is a whole renaissance of alternative platforms that are proliferating because people feel that they don't have a fair shake on the mainstream platforms, such as Twitter, Facebook, and all the ones we use. So I really think there's a free market solution to this. And I think it's really up to the social media companies to determine what they think is appropriate on their platform. Now, I caution them. It's a really difficult thing to do. It's really expensive. And you can always find examples of them censoring certain groups of people, which isn't a great look for them. So I caution them in bringing down the hammer and making it look like they're biased in any sort of direction.
That's really interesting. So Mr. Grasso, your point of view is more a traditionalist stance as it relates to the protections of the First Amendment. Let me go to Amy, because Amy, you said some interesting things. I actually agree with Mr. Grasso with about 85% of what he said. You said leave that decision to the free market. What do you mean when you say leave that decision to the free market?
So normatively, I would like them to go ahead and be a free and open free speech platform like Parler is, right? So at Parler, anything that is legal speech, we try to put controls over that into the hands of the individual user. Normatively, I think that's the right way to go. In terms of legally, I would allow a Facebook to make other sorts of decisions, let them censor hate speech if they choose the so-called hate speech, let them even remove what they think misinformation is. But the concern for me is that we are not in a free market and that these decisions are being made in conjunction with government bureaucrats and officials. Okay. And that's when you have a dangerous actual censorship. So let me ask you this.
Let me opine on this point. You do believe in the First Amendment of the US Constitution. No issue with that, correct?
Right.
All right, so let me remind everyone, the First Amendment of the Constitution says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And it also extends to freedom of speech, that Congress cannot make a law limiting that freedom. Now, there are statutory limitations to what you can say legally. If you say it, it can be held against you in a court of law. You can be arrested for it. Nobody has any issue with that. So let me give you the other side of the coin. And I'm sure, Amy, you can appreciate this being an attorney. That same provision of the Constitution says government cannot censor me, okay? A private company has the same right to exercise their constitutional freedom under the First Amendment to where the government cannot sanction them, cannot censor them. Let me give you an example. The government itself cannot come in and tell a private company what they can or cannot allow as far as wording, right? But here's the issue. You're literally in the middle, I'm talking about conservatives, are in the middle of a class action lawsuit where Donald Trump and other conservatives are asking the government by way of a judicial decision to violate the Constitution and mandate a private company to be censored by the United States government, a clear violation of the First Amendment of the US Constitution. Where am I wrong here, Amy?
I don't see it as government telling a private company what to do. What this lawsuit is a test of the so-called state action theory, which was put forth by Jed Rubenfeld and Vivek Ramaswamy early last year. And what that theory says is that the immunity, the legal immunity that's given under Section 230, if you combine that with a series of carrots and sticks that have been given to social media by government politicians, bureaucrats, et cetera, telling them how they should exercise their freedom to remove content from their platforms. When you combine those two things, you have in effect state actors making decisions to remove content in those companies. So I see it in a different way. These lawsuits provide an opportunity to redress state action.
Okay, the lawsuit is dead on arrival, all right? I mean, it's dead on arrival. And let me highlight Section 230C, which is basically what we call the Good Samaritan section of that particular clause. It says, hey, listen, if you operate in good faith, if you remove information that is obscene, that is lewd, if you do these things out of good faith, then there will be immunity from civil liability and prosecution because these platforms exist similar to, let's say, a town circle, a town square, where people are able to discuss and to talk, a public square. But here's where it's different. It ain't public, meaning it is not owned by the citizens, it's owned by private individuals, which makes it slightly different. So 230 is this compromise that says, if you make good faith efforts to ensure that people are not simply violated in particular ways, that they are not hearing hate speech on a regular basis, then we will make sure that because of that good faith effort, you're not prone to civil liability and you will continue to be protected and have these protections allocated to you. But let me go to this because I find this quite interesting and I want to go to both of you all for a response on this. So Donald Trump leading the lawsuit basically saying that a judge needs to get involved, a federal judge needs to get involved because he is being discriminated against because a private company will not allow him to post his speech, which by the way is not a violation of constitutional law whatsoever, but he wants to make that argument. He then creates Truth Social. You both are familiar with Truth Social, correct? Yeah. He creates Truth Social, and in the summary of what it is is described as a place of free-flowing content, censorship-free experience. However, 6 days after opening, they have already been cited for stopping certain content and deactivating certain users from the platform. Do you not find it to be the height of hypocrisy for the man who's leading the charge saying social media should not have the legal authority to censor individuals on their private platform? Then he creates a private platform and does the exact same thing that he's suing other private companies for doing. Mr. Grasso, I will start with you first.
Well, this hits at the heart of the argument. There has to be content moderation. There is no other choice. And let's face it, Section 230 definitely has its pros and cons, and there is hypocrisy. In the end, life is about hypocrisy, and we see that at the corporate level, right? And in the end, I'm gonna toe the conservative line here. I'm all for limiting liability for media companies and social media companies, because in the end, that's what makes America more competitive. If we start to restrict this sector too much, guess where it's gonna go? It's going to go offshore. This sounds incredibly Republican and incredibly conservative, every single talking point that's coming out of my mouth, and yet somehow we're completely reversed in this argument. And I'm curious to see what Amy thinks about this.
Yeah, Amy, please tell me, how in the world does the man leading the class action lawsuit create a company in the similitude of the companies he's suing and does the exact same thing that he says these companies have no legal right to do?
So whether he's a hypocrite or not, I would have to base my decision on seeing the particular content moderation decisions. But with respect to Section 230, while I believe the principle behind it is correct, I'm not sure that Section 230 is the proper implementation of that limitation of liability. And the words that you used, Dr. Ritchie, good faith. I don't believe it's good faith for these removal decisions to be made at the behest of the Biden administration, the Surgeon General, et cetera. We start to ourselves look a bit like Vladimir Putin, right? If we're censoring.
Amy, all due respect, where is the evidence that you could present right now that says Biden is removing this content, or the federal government?
Jen Psaki saying that they are flagging misinformation for Facebook during a press conference is one piece.
Okay, Grasso, go ahead.
I think there's an extra step there. So you're both correct. So what Amy's saying is, if the CDC says it's false, we're going to remove it, right? But there's an extra step there, right? Because Facebook or Twitter has to decide that they're going to use
that is correct,
the CDC
and that was
or a government resource as a North Star.
That's right. Yes. So that's my point back to you, Amy. The government is able to also express speech. They're protected to do that as well. And when they say, we think this is false, the private company gets to make a decision on if they believe it is false as well. So that's the extra step. And let me bring another example to you. There was no question that President Donald Trump, when he was in office, was the head of the government, no question. Donald Trump told the NFL to fire individuals who took a knee in peaceful protest.
I disagreed with that too. I'm right with you.
All right, so if you're saying that this is blurring the lines, definitely Donald Trump blurred the lines when he specifically told individuals in the NFL, a private company, to be adversarial to those making a peaceful protest. But let me remind you of something, Amy. All right, so the courts have basically used a three-pronged test as it relates to this 230 rule. But the first dynamic of the test is this: the user signed a user agreement. They signed a user agreement and they said, we will adhere to the rules and regulations of this particular platform, and any violation thereof can result in our suspension or complete removal from the platform. They signed the agreement. Tell me, where does it say a signed agreement in a voluntary capacity somehow become an intrusion of my right?
So that would be another prong of the lawsuit, whether there was a breach of contract. And again, I think I'm looking forward to all the facts coming out in these cases. Was there coordination with government officials? Was there pressure because of the combination of carrots and sticks that is required for the application of that theory to go through? I think we need to see it in court. I don't think it's DOA, but I don't know what the outcome's going to be either.
All right, listen, I wish I had more time, but thank you both for being on the program. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, sir.
Always great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.